Welcome to the video tutorial for the Integrated Ambient Air Pollution Model for Vientiane Province in Lao PDR. This video tutorial provides a brief walkthrough of the model user interface. The model is the outcome of a pilot project coordinated by UNDP and developed by the Millennium Institute for both Vientiane Prefecture and Chiang Rai provinces. The interface starts on a landing page and provides two initial options for interacting with the model, either jumping straight to the simulations page or learning more about the model development process and structure. So new users may wish to learn more, while repeat users can skip straight to the scenario simulations. So let's click on Learn More, and this will take you through to a background information and a short introductory page. And it's important to note a few things here. Firstly, that the model has been developed to better understand key sources and drivers of air pollution, their impacts for health and development, and potential policies or interventions to address the challenge. Secondly, it can be used by governments and other stakeholders to run scenario simulations to explore the effects of different assumptions as well as specific interventions on air pollution in different sectors over the period until 2030. Thirdly, that it was a participatory model building project designed, so the model was designed based on stakeholder workshops and input, which informed the conceptualization of key drivers and sources of air pollution, as well as potential interventions. Fourthly, the model is built at the provincial scale for Vientiane Prefecture province, dividing into both rural and urban areas. And air pollution concentration projections are average annual values in milligrams per cubic meter. It includes three main air pollutants, but is mainly focused on particulate matter or PM2.5 emissions. And the model covers a range of key sources of air pollutants, including transport, agriculture, waste, industry, forestry, households. It's also important to note that policy interventions are formulated as investments in US dollars, meaning that a certain amount of investment delivers a certain reduction in air pollutant emissions. This enables the user to easily compare the costs and efficacy of different interventions, and single or multiple interventions can also be bundled together to create a policy package and run a scenario. So moving to the model description. The next page provides a quick snapshot of the underlying model structure or the back end of the model. It's not critical for users to understand or engage with this structure, but it provides a quick look under the hood, which shows how the model works. This first image is a helicopter view of the 8 modules that are in the model. It is built around a range of air pollutant emission source activities, which are influenced by key economic and social drivers. So the model estimates the emissions of air pollutants associated with different source activities and converts these to annual mean concentrations. Health impacts associated with exposure to annual mean concentrations are then estimated, with the focus being on chronic health impacts. So if we click on Next at the top here, that will take us through to a brief description of each of the different modules. So firstly, the economic drivers module, which includes economic growth, income, tourism. The social drivers module, which includes population, education, and awareness. The source activities module, which estimates air pollution emissions and includes 18 different source activities. Not all of these will be relevant for every province, and data on these activities taken from the provincial scale is used to calibrate the model. These source activities are converted into emissions for 3 different pollutants: particulate matter 2.5, NO2 and SO2, using emissions factors. Projections are made in kilograms of pollutants per year. A dispersion model then converts air pollutant emissions to annual mean concentrations in milligrams per cubic meter, which is important for chronic disease. These are calculated for both urban and rural areas. It's important to note here as well that concentrations will include emissions from within the province as well as cross-border emissions. And these are also estimated in the model. And finally, the health impact module estimates average yearly exposure to air pollutant concentrations, and specifically the estimated increase in mortality associated with PM2.5 concentrations. There is also a policies interventions module, which we'll review in more detail when we go into the main simulation page. So if we click back and then go now to the simulation, this will bring up the main simulation page or the main simulation interface, which is the main page where you will interact with the model. The interface is based around a simplified systems map or diagram representing some of the key feedbacks in the model. When you first enter the interface, the results for the baseline simulation for 2030 are presented. So this is the business as usual scenario without any additional policy interventions. You'll note here that there are a range of source activities from different sectors. So these are depicted by the different pictorial icons. And these source activities are driven by the economic and social drivers up to the left here. Directly below those icons, you will see both the emission share as a percentage and the total emissions in kilograms per year from each of those sectors. You can also change the pollutant using these drop-down menus here, but we will keep particulate matter for the time being. And now these emissions then contribute to the concentration of emissions in the province, which is displayed in the centre here with both rural and urban concentrations. And directly below that, the percentage change. And we'll see these numbers start to change once we bring in different policy interventions. Also over on the right here, we have the cross-border emissions. So these are included and will also contribute to concentrations in the province. These concentration levels also result in a certain amount of exposure up on the top right here, which also feedbacks again to both the economic and social drivers. So importantly, down the bottom here, we have these green tabs, which are the various policy interventions or investments. These correspond to different source activities, where additional annual investment in each of these areas can reduce emissions from the different source activities. So there are two ways to enter policy investments. The quick way, which allows for a quick real-time simulation using pop-up charts. So if we click on one of these green icons, it will bring up a green pop-up, and you'll see these graphical charts here where investment can be incorporated directly into these interfaces. So the chart here shows along the x-axis years from 2023 to 2030. So this is annual investment through to 2030. And on the y-axis here, investments can range from 0 to 2.5 million US dollars per annum. So we can include some investment here. And we can also click on this back arrow to reduce. And we can then explore some of the effects of these policies. The simulations are instantaneous. So as soon as you enter in those investments, you will see changes in the concentrations. And in particular, you'll see these change in the percentage concentration will start to become stronger and stronger. Now, if we click back on that intervention, there are a couple more buttons here. So we can restore those values. So that will essentially remove that policy. And we can also click on this More button if you want to learn more about the intervention. So it's important to note that every policy includes this explanatory page, which describes how the policy is formulated in the model, The key assumptions are also made clear, which are based on available data regarding the cost and efficacy of different interventions. And the user interface also allows us to adjust these as needed. So the user can adjust these key assumptions around the cost of different interventions in the interface. It's also possible to enter interventions directly into this interface using the similar graphical chart, or you can also enter it into a table if you want to be very precise about the amount of investment in a particular year. So again, if we click on Restore Values and remove that policy, so this takes us again back to that baseline projection without any policies. And we'll see down the bottom here that there are 12 of these green tabs. So there are 12 different policies in total that aim to reduce or abate different sources of emissions. For transport emissions, there are 3 policies. For electric vehicles, for engine efficiency, and for engine filters. For forest fires, we have community forest management. For agricultural emissions, there are policies for farming machinery and training in sustainable farming. For waste emissions, there are policies for improving waste management, as well as for recycling and composting. For industry emissions, there are policies to reduce emissions from relevant industrial activities, which include cement and petrochemicals and construction in Vientiane province. For those transboundary emissions, we also have a regional cooperation policy, which allows us to make assumptions about whether or not the surrounding provinces introduce similar air pollution management interventions. And there's a policy also on clean cooking, which is for the substitution of solid fuels with clean cook stoves. And finally, there's also a policy on masks, which doesn't necessarily reduce emissions in the province, but it can reduce exposure to emissions. So most of these policies are formulated as an amount of investment, which then the model converts into an amount of emissions reduction or abatement. If multiple policies are entered consecutively, then the model will display their cumulative effect. So for example, we can enter in policies for electric vehicles and say for recycling and composting. And these will have a cumulative effect on the concentration of emissions. And we'll also see changes in their share of emissions, as well as the kilograms of emissions per year in these the grey bar down the bottom here. So again, the reductions in emissions, concentrations, exposure, etc., are updated dynamically as you enter more policies, and the results show, and you'll see the results start to show stronger reductions as more policies are added. And importantly, down in the left corner here in the green text, we also have the total expenditure. So the amount of expenditure or investment that you make in these different policy options is also summed and presented in the bottom left corner. So this is investment over the full period from 2023 to 2030. Now, finally, moving to the right-hand side of the interface, we'll also see some additional buttons and also the goal achievement up in the top right corner here. Starting at the bottom, we have a restore all values. So if we click on this restore all values, it will remove the effects of all policy that we have put into the model. So it enables you to remove a scenario and start fresh with a new scenario. The home button here will just send you back to the home page if you want to have another read of the model description. We can go back to the simulation again. Importantly, this socioeconomic conditions button allows the user to also adjust some of the key underlying assumptions in the model. So these relate to the key drivers in the model. So you can adjust future assumptions around income and population growth rates, as well as around education and awareness using these levers at the top. The info button here will bring up some additional information on those assumptions. about how those assumptions were set. And in this page, the user can also set goals for the reduction of PM 2.5, as well as for mortality rate outcomes. So these are set as a percentage reduction from the baseline value. Now, progress towards these targets is represented up in the right top of the screen. So up in that blue bar, we can see the percentage goal achievement. So this is the amount of progress that a scenario makes towards the reducing PM 2.5 emissions and mortality rates based on those targets that you set. Now, last of all, there is a more results tab, which can take you through to a range of time series charts. You can see some drop-down lists here where you can look at different air pollutants, as well as different sources of emissions, as well as impacts on income and mortality. And we'll also see down in the right here a compilation of the total expenditure that is made across those different policy options. So that is the end of the video tutorial on the integrated air pollution model for Vientiane. I hope you've enjoyed it, and good luck with running your own simulations. Thank you.